All right, let's have roll call.
Carlson?
Here.
Hurtak? Here. Clendenin?
Here.
Henderson? Vieira? Miranda?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
Physical form.
All right, just a couple things before we begin with item number 15. Number 8 was a motion that I had made, and there is a written report for this agenda. And if it's all right with council, I'd like to just ask for a motion to receive and file. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then for item number 9, Councilman Carlson, this was your motion. Would it be agreeable with you to continue this to May 23rd? And I'm going to ask the same of item number 14. That was, yes, sir?
Yeah, number 9 is tied in with the whole planning. It's a parallel process.
So you want to leave it for today?
I think Stephen, that one doesn't have to be a long discussion. It's just that it should be. I think it should be incorporated into this planning.
Yeah, part of the feedback that they received from the council.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just leave that. Then item number 14, Councilman Clinton, this was your motion. Would you be agreeable to continuing this to the May 23rd workshop?
Yes.
Okay, may I have a motion to
Motion.
Second.
motion to continue item 14 to May 23rd, 2024 workshop. All in favor? Aye. This was item number 14, Councilmember Clendenin with the motion, second from Councilmember Miranda. All right. At this time, we will begin with item number 15. We have a PowerPoint presentation. Who'd like to kick it off?
Good afternoon, Council. Abby Feely, Deputy Administrator, Development and Growth Management for the city. Item number 15 is a motion related to safety and parking lots in Ybor City. And I just want to give you a little bit of background. The original motion on this was made in September of 2022 for staff to report back in December. In December, we came before you and asked for additional time to February. And then in February, we came and asked for today's date. And you'll see on the next slide that we have had a series of meetings with different stakeholder groups, and through those groups have been able to touch on other individuals related to this matter. When I think about this matter, I really think about it in two pieces: the physical conditions of the lots and how they are meeting the code, and then the operational aspects of the lots. And while the regulations for the lots live inside the land development code, development coordination doesn't enforce them. Code enforcement does. And then we have other aspects of these operations that impact TPD. So this has been a collaborative effort between development coordination, code enforcement, which you see Keith with us today, TPD, Megan and Captain College are here with us today. And then also we've had Susan Johnson-Velez from the legal department working with us on this. Over the past year, we have had these different meetings, and then there was a multiple of discussions that were had. Parking lot personnel versus security, the fencing and landscaping, wheel stops, where the lots are, pay lots versus non-paid lots, and ongoing enforcement, regularity of enforcement. And I'll tell you, there has been robust dialogue, to say the least, on what's been going on and the direction that we need to take. The current standards are located in section 27-178. I didn't print all of it out for you. I did go ahead and work through what is there in relation to the standards. And then this goes to the physical conditions of the lots. So when the matter came up, we started to handle this. I asked for some of my team members. We had an old historic parking lot list from Gloria Moretta that was in an old drive somewhere. So we had that had a lot of historical information on it. And then we had some information from the neighborhoods on where they had seen lots popping up. And I asked some of Keith's team and my historic preservation team to work together and go out and do an inventory of what we saw were lots. Given our capacity and what we're processing, it took us a little bit of time to get that together. And really what they were looking for as they went out there was the property being used as a lot? That was the first and foremost question. And then based on these conditions that are in the code, you know, what appeared to be in compliance? The last part of that was all of the lots in Ybor should have a certificate of appropriateness from the Barrio Latino Commission. It's a staff approval. So we then cross-referenced all the data we collected with that last piece was which ones of these have BLC permits. We also used some Google Earth and some other things just to see how long they had been there. Had they been in operation? Were there cars there? Different things like that. It was my idea to then send out a letter to the operators and let them know, hey, it's come to our attention that maybe these lots are not meeting the current regulations. We'd like to give you 6 weeks to review what's going on and come into compliance or address the deficiencies that may be associated with your lot. And those letters went out on August 15th, and we gave them through October 1st. And in the interim, Eric Cotton, Dennis Fernandez, we held a technical advisory meeting that if you wanted to come in and talk about your lot or what a regulation meant, come on in and we would have resources available to you to go through that. And we had people show up for that. I was present for that. So we're now at the point where enforcement is slated to begin coming this next week. There was nothing from stopping us as a city from just going out and enforcing and doing one mass citations all over the place, but I really felt like this is a community effort. We need to give people a little heads up of what's going on and how are we going to handle this. So in terms of physical conditions of the lots, that is where we are today. And Keith has a team and we'll be working through enforcement. If somebody is actively pursuing with us, correcting something, or there was never a BLC permit and now they're trying to get one, you know, if they're actively engaged with trying to resolve the matter, you know, we're going to work with them and not go out and be like, okay, now you're cited if we know you met with us last week and you're putting your application in or something's going on. Our ultimate goal is compliance, right? And to have these lots looking nice and meeting these regulations across the district. The other side to this is the personnel and the operational side. Currently, the code does require that the paid lots have personnel. And I have this up for you. And that is, and I'll tell you, in being engaged in this discussion with the community and with the operators, these regulations stem back from when there used to be an attendant that you actually paid, right? You pulled into Ybor on a Friday night to one of these lots and you paid your $10 or $5, whatever it was at that time, you paid it to a lot attendant. Now, of course, we have apps, we have pay boxes, we have things. I mean, we've grown past that, where that original part of that original regulation came from. So it says that you should have at least one employee on duty who shall remain Thursday, Friday, and Saturday between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Or until such time that all vehicles have been removed from the lot or the garage. And if you have two lots next to each other, you could have one attendee for those two lots. And then also, if there are any special events, you're responsible for having an attendant on those nights as well. So there were several discussions that took place related to the lot operations. And increasing the safety of those lots, including keeping the status quo with increased enforcement, hiring off-duty law enforcement. And I think this was really the guts of council's motion, is how do we ensure safety on these lots? Because those lots really are the principal use of the property, right? So there is some language we worked on, and I noticed in prepping for this the other day that it is a little bit small, so I brought a blow-up of that if necessary. But where we are today is we have this language. I'm going to talk through it with you. I'd like to get some feedback from you on it. And I'll come back to this slide in just a minute. And then my next steps is I would like to go back out to the community and conduct 2 public meetings. The first one, October, from the time I turned this in till now, we have that date. It's going to be October 11th at, I believe, 5 p.m. at the HCC room. And I'm working with Janelle McGregor's team to get communication out on that and inform all the stakeholders. And then we are working on securing the second date for December related to this as well. And then through this process, we have created a email address called eborparkingregs@tampagov.net. That has been in effect since we sent the letters for anybody to provide any information on that. In addition to holding these 2 public meetings, I would like to collect written comment from anyone who would like to provide it, and then it would be my goal to consolidate the feedback from these meetings, whatever comes in written comment, and come back to you in February. Now, I just saw your February workshop agenda. It's a little thick already, so if that's not the date that we decide on today, that is fine as well. So I'll just go back to the language, and as I mentioned, we did work on this with the legal department and with Megan Newcomb and TPD as well. And what is being proposed is that instead of an attendant, the lot operation require 1 on-duty uniformed private security officer licensed by the state of Florida. And then it says that would be visible, clearly visible from the public right-of-way, and who shall remain on the premises from the same amount of time. And then we struck or until such time as all vehicles are removed from the lot or garage, whichever is earlier. Because some people leave vehicles there till the next day, and we recognize that having somebody out past that time is not necessary. So the second is that if you have 2 adjoining lots, you would still be able to have that same officer serve both of them. And then for any lots that are larger than 150 spaces, and I've been working with our team, I don't think we have any. I will double check that. I don't think we have any of those. And then also for special event. So it's really just changing that attendant to be a different caliber person. Just to let you know, there have been some other discussions, and I am engaging Erica Moody, the new CRA director, with this as well. There have been some discussions about potentially setting up something through the CRA where that lot operators would pay a fee of some sort into a fund, and then that fund would pay for security throughout the district versus it being a lot by lot type of situation. So some of these discussions that would definitely fall outside of the realm of a land development regulation still are being talked through as we continue to kind of examine this effort collectively and come back with potential solutions. That being said, I think that's where we are for right now.
So I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
You had mentioned about Director Moody in discussions of possibly setting up a fund. Would that be to hire uniformed private security guards, or would it be for more police officers?
Let me interrupt. I don't believe the CRA would be levying a fund. It would be city council that would have to come up with that
Okay.
process. But we could talk about that further at the CRA.
Okay, okay.
Typically, as a CRA, the CRA can, with TIF funds, fund community policing efforts with TIF funds. The community policing policy, though, has to be adopted by city council. It cannot be adopted
Okay.
by the CRA.
And in regards to the uniformed private security officer, meaning armed security officer, you know, private company that their security guards carrying guns, how would that affect insurance that the property owners would have to have? Like, I mean, I know that some restaurants have parking lots in Ybor. I don't know. I mean, would an insurance carrier insure the person knowing that you have an armed individual? Or, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But anyways, I'll stop there. Councilman Clendenin, did you have your mic on?
Yes, I
And
did.
Carlson.
Question on the, kind of on how you derived at the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Is there quantitative information about, like PD calls or incidents that allowed you to fall on just the 3 nights versus the other nights of the week? Or why those 3 nights, why not 7, or why any? Is there data to support that?
Those days are what is in the code right now.
Right.
And I didn't,
But if we're rewriting it, is there?
and we could look
Yeah.
at other dates. We have not. I think it
I
was
would just
more.
want to see justification data on this stuff. Like, what are there calls, just PD field calls on, during these times? Are there incidences on these times? What's happening in these parking lots that we need to be aware of, that kind of thing?
I can let Captain College
Okay,
respond to
cool.
that.
Thanks.
Councilman Carlson.
Leading up to this, there was some question in the community about who we talked to and who we didn't in advance. And I just want to say for the record, unless I missed an email, only one person reached out to talk to me, and I didn't have any other conversations with anybody else. If anybody has comments on this, you're welcome to email us all or email me or talk to me. The only person I talked to was Jason Accardi, who's in the room. I'll get to his issue in a second. The thing about the CRA, though, it could be that there's some confusion as why CDC, Ybor City Development Corp, is trying to maybe spin off to be separate again, whereas it is that group and the other things they're looking at could end up being the funding source, but then it's separate from CRA, maybe.
I think all I was trying to do was capture that this is a multifaceted discussion that's taking place with a lot of different ideas that are leading back, because I think when it first kicked off, YCDC was leading a lot of the discussions, with Eric coming as the code discussion portion, and some of this is way beyond a land development regulation. So I think I was trying to just make the point that we're working on it from a number of different sides and trying to find the best solution.
So I think Mr. Accardi or his representative may say this in a few minutes anyway, but as I recall from the conversation, one of his main concerns is that, and he does this all throughout the country, he says his insurance carriers won't insure him if he is required to have armed guards or police. Have you checked into that at all?
I have not, and I would be happy to do so.
Just, we want to make sure of the legality, whatever we put forward, of course. I guess legal would have to look through so that we don't end up with any problems there. There are concerns about crime in Ybor, and another thing is that the police, I think you've done a ride along with them. I'm not up 3 o'clock in the morning, but I think that they have been sweeping everybody out at 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure their people aren't just hanging around in the parking lots. But the other thing is that when they're on the street or in the parking lots, they're also coming from somewhere, and so we have to address the issue of, as I've talked to police officers, there are fights that start in bars and then they carry on out to the parking lot or the streets, and if we're kicking everybody out at 3 in the morning, they could carry on to other neighborhoods. So I don't know how we can address those issues. I know some of the property owners are trying to buy properties and shut certain places down, but maybe there's a way to address it at the source also. And I'll shut up here. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you, and I just wanted to go back to why we did this motion in September for the newer council members. we were having trouble with, honestly, shootings, other types of issues down in Ybor, and I did a ride-along with the police to help shut down Ybor, and one of the things that was mentioned multiple times was the fact that they were having to send a lot of officers out to do this work, which took away from the community, took away from District 3 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and so went back into the code and found out, lo and behold, that parking lots are supposed to have attendants to help with this. So that was not happening. And so that was the whole reason this was brought forward. I just wanted to give you all the background on it. And I'm really impressed with the community input you've done with this. And I think this makes perfect sense. Of course, we'd want to find out if that security officer is an issue, but we already have security officers at clubs. So I'm not really, like, I don't know. So we would need to find out more from legal. But the idea is to take the onus off of the city and put it onto the property owners where it belongs.
Right.
And because especially now, we just passed this budget that we're hopefully gonna get 30 new officers, but if we don't, even so, we need to put those officers in the rest of the district where they're needed. And that's really what this came up about. It was helping police do their job by having the property owners do theirs.
All right, anybody else? Yes, sir?
Thank you for that background.
Councilmember Vieira.
And thank you, Councilwoman Hurtak, for that background. I mean, I think this is, and again, the point on the armed guards is obviously very relevant. You talk about, escalating a situation from a risk liability perspective for an insurance carrier. Obviously, that would certainly do it. But, obviously being very supportive of this, we want to make sure that property owners are, I think empowered is the wrong word to use, but made to do their fair share whenever it comes to public safety issues. And certainly this is something that puts that forward, and I'm supportive. But again, we do want to inquire on the armed issue because that's obviously very important. We don't want to pass something that is either ineffective or just can't be put into place for whatever reason. But yeah, as an attorney, I haven't done premises security cases in a long time. It's been probably 12, 13 years or so, but yeah, there's a number of issues that can arise from that, so we'll have to check up on it. But again, thank you, Councilwoman Hurtak, for bringing this forward, because I think this is good. And it's good, by the way, to see how, somebody like Councilwoman Hurtak did goes into the community with our police officers in Ybor City and goes, hey, look, this is something that we ought to look at. And again, you go put yourself into situations like that and you find out problems and you can think about solutions. And so this is a good perspective example of that. So thank you.
Councilman Moran.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate everything that's been said and everything that's going on. This situation is, who's responsible? I had a year and a half ago, I had some casual conversation with people in Ybor City. And they were saying, well, we need help. I said, what kind of help do you need? Well, the problem starts between 1 o'clock in the morning and 3, something like that, behind the business in the parking lot. I said, and where are the people coming from? Well, I guess they're coming from some of my businesses. And my answer was, they didn't like it. I said, well, maybe you ought to do something to break them up before they go out there. Because we're not responsible for what you do after they leave your place. But I'm sure they wasn't drinking Coca-Cola. So there's something to it that has to do with alcohol, I said. And alcohol is a very responsible thing for you guys to look at because that comes with your license. Something happens, and it continues to happen, then you have a problem with your license. So I said, but I'm just in a quick math as we were talking about it. If you have 2 lots that are adjoining, and I know minimum pay is $15, I'll put $20 down because more than likely there's some charges that the agency that hires these officers has to do, and I'm just taking a shot at this. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. That's $360 times 2 is $740. And if you're going to go to another area where you have to work extra and all that, that's another, it's $1,440 a day. And I'm not saying I'm right, but I was doing this right quick. If you have a lot that has 150 parking spaces, the same thing applies. And if you have under 4 there, if you have a permit for a special event, those people, security guards have to be 2 hours, notice the way it's worded, 2 hours before the event and 2 hours after the event. That doesn't mean it's 4 hours. That means that whatever it starts, the first parking car that comes in the park, that's when it starts, and it ends 2 hours after the event. And, yeah, a 2 hours event is after the event. So that means, I don't know if they're gonna work 6 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, the way that's worded, because it's not worded like the others were. So the expense is gonna be somebody's, and whoever's, the expense is whoever's holding the event, whoever owns a lot, I guess that's what this means. So it's gonna be quite expensive, which I'm not against, but I have to be clarity, there has to be some clarity, that certainly the city's not starting with all this. This has happened because we have lined the areas on both sides, and that's what they needed at that time to make it an event, place, a nice people go and have fun and have dancing and drinking or whatever. And these are the things now, these are the repercussions of things that we've done as a city, not individually, as a city. The police officers, I'm sure, are tired of going up and breaking up things, and there's been some problems in some of these parking lots that are not seen right here in the form that I'm looking at, other problems that have occurred. So it's up to all of us, including the property owner of the business and or the subcontractor who rents the building, to make sure that the people that are in there are not wackos, or they haven't drunk too much to be a wacko. And these are how I see it. But after that, we'll have to come to some conclusion.
Councilman Condon?
Is there, a statement and a question. Is there somebody from Tampa PD here to talk about this
Yes.
issue? Okay, good. So we're gonna hear from them next, I'm assuming. So I'll refrain from that, because what I wanna know is, because honestly, I think a little bit as a quagmire, because if you're operating a business, you're responsible for the business that you operate. You can't be responsible for somebody else's business. So I think this, you have to cut through all of the smoke here and say, is there a need or is there not a need? You know, so if you're operating a business, is there a need for this security based for public safety, or is there not? And if you're operating a business, that's part of the cost of doing business. If we identify need, but I want to see quantitative, or I want to hear from subject matter experts that there's actually a need for this before, instead of just intuitively, that's what I want to see. But for this proposed armed security.
It's already existing.
Yeah, we are.
This is just the new language.
No, that's what I'm saying. I want to see if there's a need for this new language, or because this would be right now. There's no armed security in
Correct.
correct.
Yeah, but-
Correct, it's an attendant
Yeah,
right
it's just
now.
an attendant.
Right.
But right now, they don't even have attendance. That's the issue.
Well, but they're supposed to. So that's just our lack of not enforcing the current rules. That's not. So we already have a rule that there's supposed to be attendance. So now we're asking them to add the additional thing, and I just want to make sure that there is, in fact, is there an actual need, which we haven't heard yet. So I'm waiting to hear that. Thank you.
All right.
And,
so-
and I think you said it this morning, I mean, we're dating this language, we're not married yet, we're starting with this,
We're taking
and
it out
then
to
we're taking it out to coffee, and then we're gonna workshop it with the community in the next 2 months, and then we'll come back to you in February.
I just want to say, great job.
Thank you.
All right, can we have, TPD, did you want to say anything before we go to public comment?
Good afternoon, council members. Dan College, Tampa Police Department, captain, I believe, as of today. I'm here,
Congratulations.
thank you.
No clapping.
And thank you for the support, and Councilwoman Hurtak, I've seen you out there, so thank you for supporting our officers. It's not easy to go out in Ybor that time of day. Our schedules don't really pattern that, but thank you, I appreciate that. And I'm here to answer any questions.
3 o'clock in the morning, I will be in each to do it right along.
Councilmember Carlson.
So if TPD is able to clear folks out between 3 and 3:30, so that gets rid of the late like after hours loitering issue, then if some of the, or you can tell me your expertise on this, but if some or most of the conflicts start in a bar and then spill out into the street and the parking lot, is there a way to identify those people that are having problems as they exit the bars and escort them out of Ybor at that point, or what's your recommendation regarding?
Sir, so when the bar is empty at 3 o'clock, they're pushed out mostly up onto 7th Avenue and the sidewalks. It's a very dynamic and fluid situation. We have officers positioned at static posts throughout 7th Avenue and both north and south of 7th. Because those problems, once we deal with them on 7th, they may flare up again on a side street or on 8th Avenue, Central Ybor, anywhere. You pick any location. If people are determined to keep fighting, they're going to find each other again and fight. So we do our best to clear the street and encourage people to get back to their cars and leave the area. It's a challenge, and those officers are amazing at what they do. It's a very challenging situation. It's draining. It's hard to keep an officer on that squad for more than a year because of having to deal with those issues over and over and over again.
Is there, do these fights, if you clear them out of Ybor, do the fights go to wherever the folks came from?
They may or may not. I can't answer that because if they don't live in the city, we wouldn't know about that.
And then what if a big fight happens at a bar, especially if somebody draws a weapon? Besides the security of the bar, do they call you all right away? And then how are you able to, if you don't arrest them, are you able to escort them out of Ybor at that time, or what? I know you need more staff, by the way, but what's your recommendation on that?
I would say, and I'm sure Councilwoman Hurtak has probably seen this as the bars clear out, but it's more of detection by the officers on these static posts of fights or disturbances, more so than a phone call, because you see them as they develop. So you see a large group, you notice people fighting. Hopefully, there's no weapons involved, but we do our best to enforce the law and keep the peace. We want everybody to enjoy Ybor as it should be enjoyed. It's safe to say that it's kind of in Tampa's DNA, and my goal as a district captain is to make sure that people can go to Ybor, have a good time, enjoy the city, and go home without any issues at all. We know that's not reality, but that's our driving force.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work that you all do. It is really cool. I mean, I highly recommend staying up one night and doing it because they have it down to a science about how they get everyone out. But the issue isn't getting people off of 7th Avenue, it's getting them out of the parking lots. And that was the thing where literally after they're all moved off of 7th Avenue and into parking lots, then the police have to get in their cars and just drive around and stop and ask people to move along. And that is not, instead of going back out to do what they normally do, that's the issue of, hey, you can't hang out and loiter in the parking lot, but when you're drunk and you've had an evening, you just want to kind of hang out with your friends for like 2 or 3 more minutes. And they're saying, no, you need to move along. And I rode with some officers who just did a phenomenal job at being jovial and friendly and joking. And they weren't, you have to have the touch with people who are inebriated to just get them to do what you want them to do. It is definitely a gift that your officers who do that work have, and I can see why they don't last very long at it. And so, no, just because of the anxiety that would also go along with it, because what doesn't go well together is alcohol and guns, and we have, as a society, encouraged more gun ownership. So this is a natural progression. And so that's really, for me, the big issue is once those folks get to the parking lots, there should be a few officers driving around, but not 20 to 22. I mean, I've just never seen anything like it. It was just a giant swarm of police officers driving around and around and around over and over again. And that's what these either employees or security officers or whatever, that's kind of where they come into play.
But are they gonna, we didn't put in here that they have to clear the lots, they just.
No, but they're there, and just being present is like, hey, you can't loiter here. There's already rules for not loitering in a parking lot. So they can say, hey, sorry, you can't loiter here. That's their job and again, freeing up the police officers to go back to doing what they are supposed to do, which is be out in District 3 doing, other, answering other calls. That was the overall issue for me, is that at some point they're already supposed to have an employee, so we should make sure and if the private security officer, that's and again, up to after we have these discussions, what the community decides they want, but we're at least should have the employee that should be there to help facilitate people leaving the lots and allowing officers to then only have to respond if the employee at the lot is having an issue.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you so much, Chair. Hello, Captain. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
First of all, I had no idea people still stay out to 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I haven't done that in a very long time, so it'll be interesting.
You're grooming them at school.
When well, the baby boom generation, I just had no idea people still do that, but
Yep.
I kind of remember now. I want to ask you a question in terms of the safety of the security, the future security, or, that's not present now, non-city employee, in terms of having a job like this at this late hour, trying to get people out of a parking lot, and the safety of the person who would be assigned this task or work for a parking lot as a parking lot attendant, and they're not police officers. Just in your opinion, do you see there being some safety concerns for the individual employee trying to be in a situation like this?
Ma'am, that's a challenging question. I think that strays from my wheelhouse slightly, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer that. I believe that security guard, just by presence itself, would assist, one, making people feel safer. It's an extra set of eyes for us.
Yeah.
We don't expect them to intervene in a crime, but we ask if they do see a crime to contact us so we can take action.
Yeah, for me, yeah, okay. Because for me, I just think that it has to be a collaborative relationship with that particular employee regarding their safety, as well as, having the ability to get in touch with Tampa police officers who are trained, just in case something, can go wrong. I don't want to imagine what that is, but my mind is just thinking about the safety of the individual employee that's working isolated alone in a parking lot and maybe not having the skill sets or training to address certain issues and, needing to have access to an officer. Because it made me think back to, high school at McDonald's. We used to have a police officer there on Del Mabry and Spruce. Yeah, Jefferson hung out there, Officer Northrop. Retired police officer now, but you know what I'm saying? So that constant presence of a real police officer is something that we're doing now, although it's not our responsibility because it's written in the code. I just kind of feel like there still needs to be a connection to real law enforcement, maybe not in the high numbers, but in the dismissal hour, our presence still be a part of this situation. It's just, I just want to say that publicly, but thank you for answering the questions.
So clearly you weren't one of the cool kids. You were hanging out at McDonald's at Spruce and Del Mabry.
No, I was allowed to go, but not, my mother was very particular, you couldn't go every Friday.
I have a question. So
But-
your presence here, is it to be assumed that this is an official kind of blessing of at least moving forward with this idea that's being proposed from the Tampa Police Department?
Sir, I really don't have an opinion either way. My appearance here, my understanding is just to answer questions
Pleasure, City Council.
on events that occur in Ybor that are
Okay, very
within
good.
our.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very,
Oh, sorry.
yes?
Just ask one follow-up. Councilmember Clendenin just briefly referred to the fact that there's no requirement, at least in this summary, for the parking owners to clear out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Is it legal for us to add that requirement, and what would be the implications of it?
Megan Newcomb, Assistant City Attorney. I'll take over and help out Captain College, even though I don't know the answer to that specific question. That's a good question, Councilman Carlson. I don't know the answer to that question. I can find that out for you because I'm not a land use lawyer, but a couple of things I just wanted to clarify for you all. I believe that the proposed language that came from this ordinance says a licensed security officer, so I don't believe it indicates it must be armed. The state of Florida issues license for people to become security officers. They have different types of licenses, so they can be armed security officers or unarmed security officers. So I wanted to clarify that. And then the other thing was the dates, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all of that. We kind of just used the current ordinance as a model, and that was just because that's what we have. And so as to questions about the dates and the times and all of that, that's where we started. I certainly can appreciate all of the comments from you all, but that's just a little bit of clarification. There's one other thing I wanted to point out. Oh yes, it's my understanding that City of Tampa owned parking lots and parking garages do employ security officers. And so, at least from my perspective, when I came in working for the city, that was when this came up, that was part of the reason why we proposed this language, was because sort of an equivalency. And from the police department's perspective, they were asked to look at crimes that occur in city-owned parking lots and city-owned parking garages versus crimes that occur in privately owned parking lots in Ybor City. And there is a correlation, from what I understand, that the crimes occurring in city parking lots and garages are lower versus the crimes in private parking garages. So that's essentially the involvement of the police department, and me as the police department attorney. The land use stuff, I would have to defer to the other attorneys about that, but that's just a little bit of clarification in terms of why you're seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah, and that's the data that they brought to us in September about the.
So we missed it being the new Nissan Council.
Yes, they did bring those numbers. Thanks for reminding me, Ms. Newcomb. That was, and I actually did. I parked in a city parking lot, and I actually spoke to the officers or the security officers on duty, and I said, I asked them if they thought, if they had any issues, and they said no, that really they were just there to make sure people were, people apparently also have trouble finding their cars later, which makes a lot of sense. And so he said he did a lot of people helping find their cars and helping with, he said most of the stuff were things like if they had something happen to their car. Helping facilitate that. But to Councilman Carlson's point, it would be hard to close the parking lots at 3 only because of the employees of the establishments that are closing immediately. They would still need, I think that's why 4 o'clock was chosen, so that the employees of the businesses could get out and get in their cars.
So is there a requirement for 4?
No, that's what's in our, it's been in the language for a long time. 10 to 4 has been the attendant language.
They can be open 24 hours a day, I would think.
Yeah, just to.
No, they're not required to close at 4 because, as Ms. Feely mentioned, some people who say drank too much and then got a ride with their friend who's was the designated driver, or they found a new friend that they went home with. Or
Can you clarify that for me?
no, I'm not gonna clarify that for you. But the fact that there are cars left overnight.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that for a moment. So the language that's currently in there from the 10 p.m. to the 4 a.m. is concerning the attendant. It's not concerning the lot's overall operation. I appreciate Megan clarifying too that it is a uniformed private security officer. I think part of what the discussion brought back when we were out in the community was, if you have an attendant there, nobody really knows. Sometimes the attendant sits in a car. Sometimes they're there and they leave. Sometimes they're in regular clothes. Nobody had an idea of who was actually out there facilitating the operation of the lot. So I think that's part of the visual deterrence and getting someone there who is uniformed, but that did not imply that they were armed. So I just wanted to clarify that. And when a piece of land is a principal parking lot, just like in downtown, they're open 24 hours, right? So I wouldn't think that, again, this speaks to the attendant, not to the lot itself. So the lot couldn't close necessarily like that, because that is the use of the land, it is the lot. So, thank you.
All right, let's go to public comment. Do we have anybody here from the public that wishes to speak? Thank you, sir.
Charlie, I think you and I need to go to Ybor about 3 a.m. to see if we can find some new friends.
I've never been to Ybor. That I can recall.
Good afternoon, Steve Michelini. First, I'd like to, make a general comment that my client had tried to meet with some of the council members in advance so that we weren't limited to the 3 minutes, and we were prohibited from doing that. So I'm gonna try to get through all of the material, but in the event that I don't, I would request that they please give me a little additional time.
All right.
Let's just start with the premise that the crime doesn't start in the parking lots. Nobody goes to Ybor City to park. They go there for something else. They go there for a restaurant or for entertainment of some kind. And so I think we're kind of looking at this backwards, where crime is starting doesn't have anything to do with a paid parking lot versus an unpaid parking lot. Whatever regulations are adopted by the council should apply to all parking lots. You don't have a criminal jump in across a lot and say, oh, well, I can't do it here because that's a free lot versus I can do it here because it's a paid lot. It makes no sense. It's an area-wide problem. It's not a specific location problem. And when the city talks about, well, they have, police in their parking lots, they have garages and lots that have 1,000 spaces. You're talking about parking lots from private owners that have 100 to 130 spaces. So the economic impact on them is far more severe than it would be on a smaller, on a much larger venue. When you talk about, the paying for this really doesn't belong in a private venue for police protection. It really belongs with TPD, and the funding should come from CRA. As Mr. Massey pointed out, it requires a motion from council to establish that process going to the CRA. But they have the money. They collect the money. The owners previously had offered in one of the meetings to create a fund to help offset the costs. But they did that voluntarily. No one told them they had to do it. But if they're going to be included in that, the other businesses should all be involved. So, and that's why I get back to the CRA, because the CRA collects money from every business and every property. And that's rightly where it belongs. There used to be what was called an Ybor City squad that did nothing but on weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that they only dealt with Ybor City. We had worked out some language which we've transmitted to the city, but the advisory letter that went out with the alarm and the alert didn't specify until about a week or so ago what those issues were, and then they were told to try to comply, and the compliance measures were so severe that it would take thousands of dollars and many months to accomplish that. I'd like to have some more time, but.
Go ahead.
So when you talk about the Ybor City parking, this is a chart that was given to us by TPD.
If we can bring the overhead up.
Is it up yet?
Not yet. If we can activate the overhead, please. All right. there.
So from June until September, this is the distribution of crimes in Ybor City. This is Ybor City wide. This is not related to a parking lot. And there were approximately 500 instances from June of this past year until September. So, when we start talking about crime in Ybor City and trying to make it safer and make it, a nicer place to live and work, you really have to look at the whole area, not just whether you have a paid parking lot. That makes no sense whatsoever. So one of our requests is to make the rules apply to all parking lots, and then make the criteria reasonable. And we'll be happy to meet with the staff in the workshop settings with Abby and her staff to come up with reasonable solutions. We have our own documents regarding language, and we've submitted that to them for consideration. But when you get into the process, like I said, nobody goes to Ybor City to park any more so than they go to park in the stadium parking lots. They're not going to the parking lot, they're going to an event. And so if you want to control the activity, you control it at its source, not at the receiving side, which apparently becomes the parking lot. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We work diligently with them. but I want to make sure that the property owners are included in every step of the process before it comes back to council. And so we appreciate your time and all of the efforts that have gone into it. So,
Thank you very
you
much.
want to add anything?
Councilman Anderson, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi. As the property owner, were you aware of the ordinance that was in place for
Yes, ma'am.
security?
Yeah, could I have
Go ahead.
3 minutes, 1 minute? Oh,
Sure.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. All
State
right.
your name.
Jason Accardi.
All right.
Hi, I'm President, CEO of 717 Parking, and also partner with the Cardi Property Group. Steve touched on a lot of the things I was gonna mention today, but I want council to understand that I've been in the parking business for 33 years. My twin brother, John, and I started the parking company back in the late 80s, I guess. And we've been operating parking in Ybor City for over 30 years. In that time, a lot of things have changed over 30 years. You know, they formed the YCDC. They brought on good leaders within the city community, like Vince Pardo and others, that looked at code regulations, not only for bars and restaurants, but for parking lots. And during that period of time, you know, we've met with TPD, we met with the neighborhood, we met with local businesses, trying to understand what issues people have as it relates to valet parking, as it relates to surface parking, garage parking, et cetera. Just a few comments, and I don't want to reiterate and take a lot of time today with you guys, because I appreciate Abby, oh, I wish you left her. Oh, you don't do there, I'm sorry. Continuing the public comment and meetings as a community. One of my biggest concerns is having our voice, and I say our voice, you know, my family and I own over 30 or 40 properties in Ybor, buildings, parking lots, et cetera. And it's very important to us that we have safe parking lots. Maybe the neighborhood feels different, I don't know, but it's important to us. It's also important to the group of property owners and private parking operators that have all met recently and talked about this issue. And as Steve mentioned, we proposed to Eric Cotton and Abby some revised language to the code, because it came to the committee originally that, and just let me step back for a minute. 20 years ago, I sat on the committee with Steve Michelini, Joe Capitano Sr., Steve Iturriaga, Joe Howden, who represented the neighborhood, Vince Pardo held it, and we had a parking committee. And the parking committee's job was to look at this ordinance, talk about the standards, how are parking lots set up, should they require landscaping or fencing, should they require paving, drive aisles, ADA handicap spaces, how do we want the parking lot to look and feel in Ybor City? And then the issue of security came up, and everybody ran away from that. TPD had no comment on security. Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. TPD had no comment on security. The operator stepped back and said, sure, we don't mind providing an attendant in the lot, someone visual to be a wayfinder, help people with paying to park, answering questions about the district, where they can go, and just assist. But what the personnel do not do is they're not law enforcement. They're not people that are actually licensed to carry a gun. They don't have the training that TPD officers have.
Keep going.
Keep going, okay.
Another minute.
And I think what frustrates me as a private property owner and a parking operator, doing it for 30 years, as Bill mentioned, nationwide, is why are we not all the same? What difference is it in a non-paid parking lot in the district to park there, and maybe they'll get mugged or, I hate to say it, shot or whatever could happen? Why are we so lucky because we want to charge a fee to our parking lot? There was just a shooting in Midtown, as an example, not in Ybor City, unfortunately, a week ago in their parking garage. Residents live there, retail lives there, and guess what? It's free parking, no charge. But if that was in Ybor City, what would be the difference in my point? So I'd like to just set the standard. If we're gonna meet a different standard, we're gonna look at the code, I'd like to recommend to the city and council, treat everybody the same. So if I'm going to a residence, if I'm going to an office party, if I'm doing whatever, they should meet the same standard we do, because crime isn't coming just to the parking lot. Crime's coming because what's happening in the neighborhood and what's happening around that. A few other just quick points. I would really like Tampa Police Department to get up here and make a comment about risk and liability and what they've been doing in the district. Steve brought up a very good point about a strike force. I've been in plenty of meetings, actually one of the meetings we had just recently with Abby and the team, we talked about funding on our end as private owners and operators, additional police department or staff to roam the current parking lots. And the current director of the YCDC had mentioned a year and a half ago, they already started that program. I don't know if you know that or not, Commissioner. And under that program, we kind of talked about, okay, well, how can we expand it? Because we want to have a safe environment. We don't want people shot in our parking lots or mugged or whatever. And so my recommendation again is to consider our proposal as private operators and owners as a community and let us fund or figure out a way, if it's through the CRA or not, come up with a solution. And that's what I'm going to ask the city in our next public meeting.
Councilwoman Hurtak, did you have a question?
Yes, so you've been a part of this, like ordinance building and all of this. Do you have attendance in your lots?
I do.
Okay, and so you've continued to have attendance in your lots from 10 a.m. to 4 a.m.?
We follow the code, yes,
10
ma'am.
p.m. to 4 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so absolutely, so I can go down.
And just for the record, no objection. I don't think any of the private owners or parking lot operators had any issues with staffing and attending the parking lot.
Okay.
Where we have an issue is when you start talking about liability and risk to do what a law enforcement organization does, like the Tampa Police Department.
That's,
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
No, I understand, I just wanted to make
Our
sure.
insurance carriers actually came to us and said, we'll drop you if this is a requirement in Ybor City, which is a big concern. Plus, Charlie mentioned earlier, Councilman Miranda mentioned earlier about the economic cost of actually putting armed guards to parking lot and how that'll affect. What'll end up happening is we'll have to shut down parking lots, then people are gonna actually move more in those neighborhoods, Commissioner. I mean, as Congressman, sorry, it's a long day for me, Councilmember. And I think it'll have a negative impact. But I think if we work as a community with the neighborhood, with the businesses to figure out a plan where TPD look at what they're doing, I think it'll be a benefit to everybody in the district. I do have like 2 more quick comments, is that okay?
Wait, Councilman Clendenin, did you have a question? I did.
Hi, Mr. Carney.
Hi.
Question, so your lots, you already have an attendant there.
Yes, sir.
So are is the question, are they uniform?
Yes, sir, they are.
So they're easily identifiable as
They are,
employees?
yes, sir.
So is the only difference whether they are trained security people versus untrained security people? Is that what we're looking at here? Is that the difference between?
Well, I
current code?
think we proposed some language that the private operators and owners got together. I don't think it was presented to council today. I know we provided to Eric Cotton, like a week or 2 ago. Oh, it was? Oh, they did, okay. Yeah, so, yes, currently the operators that I'm aware of are complying with the current code, yes, sir.
Okay, so the proposal would be they would be trained security officers. Not, like I said, it was clarified that they don't have to be armed, carrying arms. They just have to be trained security persons.
Yeah, I can't comment on
Now-
what that means, because
See,
I don't have trained.
I do think it's a little disingenuous comparing Midtown or any other area to Ybor City, because Ybor City, we all know Ybor City is very distinctive in many ways, including crime statistics. So we do have to kind of carve it out as a special exemption area of, and it requires special attention.
Well, I remember Ybor 30 years ago when they had
Oh, I do
Carmines and like maybe Columbia and maybe no development Central Ybor
30 years
wasn't
ago, I
there.
was at 3 a.m. drunk.
And I was running Buster Agliano's parking lot, and we were collecting, $5 to park in that lot. It was all cash. Today's different though.
Right.
30 years later, we have automation. I mean, I saw Fed here. I mean, he could talk a little bit, come up here as well. We have automation. We have roaming attendants that check our parking lots to wayfind, to assist people in paying to park. What I'm asking the city is to be open-minded to the comments of people that are affected and to include the entire community.
Of
Which
course.
means to me, if somebody parks at a non-paid parking lot or garage in the district, they should comply with the same standards as paid parking lots. I don't see where crime's gonna be any different. So
Mr.
if I'm-
Cardy,
yeah.
if there is a place that I can park for free in Ybor City, would you please text me and let me know where that is?
Well, there are places. If you go to
Yeah.
event for HCC,
Right.
it is free parking.
Yeah.
If you go to Columbia Restaurant Group or Santa Stefano, it is free because it's reserved for their customers.
Mm-hmm.
So there are free options in Ybor City, but crime doesn't go to a particular parking lot. Crime can happen, unfortunately, I mentioned Midtown, it can happen in a shopping center. It can happen anything that's non-paid. And what I'm saying is, if you're gonna look at the code, look at it for everybody. Treat it fair.
Why is a paid parking lot any different? So if I have a paid parking lot here, and I have an unpaid parking lot across the street, crime's gonna decide if they go because they pay $5 to park? Makes no sense to me.
Now, just playing devil's advocate though, isn't it just the cost of doing business though? If you create that business in an area that alcohol and unfortunately firearms are frequently found together in that area,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be just the cost of doing business because you've done very well in
Thank you.
of Ybor City and City of Tampa. So isn't it kind of just the cost of doing business for the type of your business model that you have?
As long as everybody complies with the same rules, I don't think we have a problem. Remember, the operators never went into a meeting saying, hey, we have an issue with the personnel. We had our own proposed language that we want to be considered by council. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
The other thing, which I think is very, very important to us, is we would like more involvement from TPD. They've stayed quiet. And again, that makes no sense to me. You know, I'm concerned about safety of my employees, of that employee that potentially could engage in a situation. I was a criminology major at Florida State, so I've done plenty of ride-arounds. I'm actually an honorable sheriff as well. So I understand the process of what officers deal with in peak and unpeak areas and higher crime areas. What I'm asking is let's get TPD involved. Let's try to have a good solution as a community. We are very sensitive to people at Park Fest, and we want them to be safe. And so do all the other private owners and operators. But we need just an open mind, and we got to keep it consistent. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Let me make one more comment, Council. One of the things that I mentioned in the email that I sent to you was to ask TPD to prepare a safety action plan of some kind, very similar to the fire safety plan that's out there that you all are working with. That would go a long way toward assisting not just the businesses, but the residents as well, so that we know what to expect. And then the solution regarding the financing and the funding of that, you know, we can discuss as that plan is developed. But it would be very useful if TPD would assist in developing a safety plan for all of Ybor and not just paid parking lots or unpaid parking lots.
One more just quick comment. In the last probably 20-plus years, as long as I can remember, we've actually worked with TPD and allowing them to actually stave off-duty officers' vehicles in our cars at the Blue Ribbon site, at the SunTrust site, and at the Valley Bank site, which we all own. And allowing them to actually put, I don't want to call them substations, I don't know what you call them, but areas for them to essentially get quick to 7th Avenue, deal with any right-of-way issues, deal with anything in our parking lots. The other thing is that we've all worked together as well with communication. We've met with the captains. I'm sorry I haven't met you, and congratulations, but it's important to us as well. We want people to feel safe coming to Ybor City, so.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that's here for public comment?
The last thing you want is for some college-age attendant to confront somebody that's been moved off of 7th Avenue and tell them to leave. And then back to Councilman Carlson's comment, there's a state law that prohibits you from removing cars because tow companies were towing cars that were left there overnight. So you can't do that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Councilman Miranda.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the comments that I heard on both sides, either side. Ybor City, there's two city parking lots, one on 15th and between 7th and 6th, and the other one is Fernando Noriega parking lot on Palm, and I believe it is 13th or 14th. And other than that, I think the city owns some land on the north side of 7th Avenue, on the parking side. I don't know about the south side of 7th Avenue. I don't know if the city has any parking. There are some there that the city owns, and who patrols them?
No,
Yes, sir. Please state
Good
your name.
afternoon, Council. Fed Revolt, City of Tampa Parking Division Manager.
Who owns the parking lot on 15th and 7th that goes all the way to train, railroad tracks and all that?
The city does, and
City
we
does.
operate it as well.
Do you have any problems there?
No, we have an armed security guard there on that lot.
Lot, you mean an army or just 2 or 3 individuals?
So we for each of the surface lot, we'll have one officer there, and then for the garages, we'll have multiple officers there for the garages, since they have multiple spaces there.
And the next question to myself is, and I don't know if you know this answer, I don't know if anybody knows this answer. In those lots that are owned city that have police officers all the time versus a lot that we're talking about now, is there any quantitative difference between the activity of the individuals coming out at 3 in the morning? Or is it the same equal amount of arrest or problems that some guy says you're ugly and the guy says, I know, but I'm gonna beat you up?
As far as like the crime activities, or
Yes,
is it?
sir.
I think
I want to put it in a nice word, you
We-
took it out of my mouth.
We had data last time.
correct. So
that
TPD
an
have the
officer
data
showed.
that shows there's more crime
I don't
on the
know that.
private lots.
Yes, that's what we were asked, the police department was asked to provide, and the most recent data from 2023 shows that there were 41 offenses in city-owned parking lots and parking garages, and 73 in privately
All
owned
right,
during
then
this,
the next
during
question.
2023.
Between the 41 and the 70-something, whatever the difference is, what was the problem for the offense? Was it just fighting, or I'm gonna kill you and I'm gonna shoot at you, or?
The number one offense from both was auto burglary.
Well, that can happen anywhere.
Right,
I can
so
put
there
it in
were-
the street,
there
we'll
were
find the number higher.
There were 6 auto burglaries in city-owned lots and 24 in private-owned lots in 2023 so far. And then the next biggest one in city lots looks like, or I'm sorry, the same would be criminal mischief, which is damage to property, trespass, 6 of those. And then, and there were, let's see, trespassing 6 in city-owned lots, 5 in private lots, 4 criminal mischiefs, 6 in city-owned and 4 in private lots, so.
Okay, and I'm a criminologist myself from University of Tampa, but I don't follow that. I don't possess to be an expert because I haven't never done it. However, then what we're doing at, even though one is on the west side of 15th Street and 7th, south side of 7th, and that's the main one, I believe, right, from the city?
Well, we have multiple surface lots in
Yeah,
Ybor.
but not as big as that one. You have parking lots that are much bigger.
The garage is
3 or
correct.
4 levels, and the others, the one that we're talking about, in fact, I was at a Columbia restaurant Saturday night, and I about left. I was 45 minutes looking for a spot. I couldn't find one even paying. I couldn't find it, till I told myself, I'm gonna park mine, and you know what, over here on this parking lot, and wait till vacancy becomes available. And you know what, I got lucky. And I parked on 22nd Street and 7th Avenue. Gratis, I mean for free. It was a Columbia, which I was going there. But the difference then is between one with and one with one with armed, one with not. But then, when you look at the geographic setup of where the activity is, El Drinko, it's not south of 15th Street, am I right? I mean, it's not west of 15th Street. The propriety of the accidents, of the innocents, turns where? More to 18th to 21st Street, am I correct?
Correct, but we have 3 surface lots total.
And what size
east
are
of 17th Street.
What size are your lots on?
66 spaces, one has 62, and one has like 64 spaces.
There's part of your answer. Your graphic area is smaller than the others that I'm talking about, am I correct?
Correct.
There's your question, I got the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else here for public comment?
I think one wants to speak, is it not speaking? Oh.
No,
All right. At this point, Ms. Feely, do you need any motions? How do we proceed? Because I saw here that enforcement goes into play this weekend, October 1st. And that is with the armed security. Is there?
No. The
Not-
enforcement is on what the code is today, and that was to make improvements to conditions that might be deficient, and then
Okay.
also, if Saturday night you're required to have an attendant out there, you should have an attendant out there, because you might receive a citation if you don't.
Okay,
So
now,
it's to enforce the current code. This
What about
proposed
further-
language is still,
further public meetings, are you having those, or those are complete?
yes, the first one is at Wednesday, October 11th.
Uh-huh.
Is it at 5 or 5:30? 5 o'clock at the HCC room.
Okay.
And we are going to send out information on that to anyone we have been in contact with already, as well as community engagement has been working with us, Janelle's team, to get the word out on that meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, she mentioned that before, as well as the December meeting they're gonna have.
December, we're finalizing the date now, and we'll have that to give out
But-
at the October hearing as well.
I think what you're trying to do is get information from us on how to proceed, and I think that, they make a good point about this should be for all parking lots in Ybor. I think that's very fair, that should be discussed when you take it to the community. Attendants are attendants and lots are lots. So I do think that we need to look at the fairness of that.
Councilman Miranda, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I want to be fair. I just want to see, Mr. Carter, can I ask a couple of questions? City, stay right there.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the days of the week, and I would imagine both of you would like to ask you one question. Most of your business is done on Friday and Saturday, am I correct?
No.
No?
My business is done every day of the week.
Yeah, but I
Ybor
mean,
has changed.
volume-wise,
Yes, sir.
it
Friday and
has to have
Saturday
some
nights
change
are,
in up and down.
Friday, Saturday nights, and Sunday during the day.
Pardon me?
Correct, that is correct.
Yeah, unless you have a special event on both cases. am I
That is correct, yes, sir.
So then, the numbers may be different, but I'm also, when I asked that question about geographical size of something, it means something else. If you have 20,000 people at Raymond James, you're not gonna have as many drunks if you have 65,000 people. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Average. So I'm using that same philosophy on what I think I know about a little bit. I haven't been in a long time to the TPD of night rides and all that, but I was there with, even had the facial discovery of, on 7th Avenue on 16th or 17th. Behind it was building there. I went in there, watched, everything was amazing. I'd walk by, they knew who I was in 5 seconds. The ugly guy. But all those things happen, and I've been in drive around when they had the peep shows with a guy who became a commander years back. Smith was his name, tall guy, very nice guy. And we used to ride, and he used to show me what it was going on, the peep shows and all that. So I know what I'm talking about there. And if it's about volume, it's about the size. 50,000 people don't fit in a 20,000 stadium, but 20,000 people don't fit in a 60,000 stadium.
Council member, crime is gonna happen on a Sunday when we're not there. Crime's gonna happen on Monday night when we're
It
not
can
there.
happen right now as you and I are speaking.
Yes, sir, correct.
Crime has no boundaries, no time, no day, and they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it.
The reason why we back 20 years ago, that we actually implemented, Gene Bressler, if anybody remembers, was the parking director at the time. It's crazy I remember all these names, but the reason why we did this was to provide a wayfinder in the parking lot. It had nothing to do with security at the time. It had to essentially collect fees, make sure people were paying, and assisting them in the parking lot. Security was never addressed at the time, and, you want to add on that?
Well,
You were here too, I think you were, maybe.
I just wanted to provide clarification, because with the armed security versus not armed security, the current code just asks for an attendant to be there from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. For the city, it just makes more sense to have a contracted armed guard as opposed to a city employee out there with no proper training at night dealing with. So that's the reason why the city has armed guard.
I agree with what you said. However, you said one thing that caught me real quick. You contract it out because you know why? The rate is cheaper than having a police officer on the lot.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
it paid me to go to the University of Tampa. Thank you
The other
very much.
thing is that the stats they provided you just a minute ago, we're double the size of what the city has based on the crime sector. Just want to make that point.
Not knowing, I've never spoke to you about this.
Yeah.
Not knowing what was going on, I wanted to know the ratio, not only of what's going on in the parking lots,
Yeah.
but if you go to other ratios on incidents that happen, I guarantee you they'll be greater than the ones you have in the city. Because you know why? They're way, your city lot is very nice. And in fact, I remember I used to be there. It's where the tunnel goes from under the street to the other side of the street. That they say the mob owned it. It's BS. And I'm not talking about Barbara Streisand. But what I'm trying to tell you is that all these things, ratio belongs on the size, on how many people fit within that post stamp. And I'm not a police officer, but I know how they think. I think I do. And they're very nice people and they do a great job. So anybody who wants to start a fight, you can have a fight right downstairs now. We don't even know it. And we have 12 spaces outside. And people get wacko. You don't have to have a couple of drinks to be crazy. You want to show off, or you're bigger than the other guy, you want to, that kind of stuff. But from what I've seen so far, and I'm not against everybody having parity, the size of the animal, an elephant doesn't fight with a baby ant, or the ant doesn't fight with the animal, because he's much smaller. So in your case, you're doing a great job, but you're contracting it out. Why? You don't want to pay overtime, you don't want to pay insurance, you want to have your own thing going on, and I agree with that. You don't want to pay vacation time, you don't want to pay sick time, so so you contract it out. And I'm not you, I'm talking about the city. You're just the gentleman who's doing a great job for the city. And these are the things that I recognize now as we're going through these things, why you're doing what you're doing, the city is. And that's good for the taxpayers, I'm not saying it's not. But I gotta make sure that when we talk about crime and we talked about location, how close are they to where the action really is, number one. And number two, what's the size of the available parking spaces compared to the other size that you wanna change? That's it, thank you.
Yes, sir. Last comment.
Yeah, last comment. There's some things that will live in my head forever. Another one of Charlie Miranda's quotes is he's talking about peep shows. Charlie Miranda and peep shows. I'm never gonna get peep shows and Charlie Miranda out of my head.
I did all that, I'll be honest with you.
So, I just want to drive this point home because I know, this is one of those, again, we're not marrying, we're dating. So as we further into this courtship, what I'd be looking for is quantitative information. And I think what we talk, and do you need a motion, or are you just working closely with PD to get the data so that it'll be incorporated when we come next time to this? So the PD's data will be incorporated into the information you bring to us. Do you need that motion, or just that's going to happen organically, I'm assuming?
That's fine.
I'm seeing the
took that
nodding
down.
of the head back there, so.
I took that down. What I
Okay.
would like is that, and I'm aware, I know that there are some items already on your February workshop, and I think we could move some of those items out, but I would like to bring this back in February. You don't have
Okay.
anything the next couple months.
And-
I really don't want to continue. I would like
Yeah.
us to really
Okay, yeah,
work.
I'm supportive of that. And also on that is that this Thursday, Friday, Saturday seems kind of arbitrary, and again, a thing of the past. Because I know there's a lot of things happening in Ybor City on Sunday nights now. Bars have drink specials, and so Sundays are maybe not as different. And I will argue that, by the way, that I think statistics are statistics. And yeah, your crime can happen anywhere, but it's more likely to happen some places than others. So that's the statistics.
gonna argue with
yeah.
you,
So
sir.
so I would like to see that data. So be able to correlate data for the justification to do whatever our next steps are going to be. So have those hard facts available for us. And that being said, I would motion to continue this to that February meeting.
May I add a friendly amendment to that? if
Yes,
I can?
please.
Can we also ask the Tampa Police Department, the owners of the lot, and the YCDC, or whatever committee it is that you got there, for them to get cooperatively together, see if they can come up with a better answer?
I think that's going to
They're
happen.
already going to do that. They have two
October.
meetings
Thank you
scheduled.
very
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to challenge all of my fellow council members between now and then to go out and do that 3 a.m. close. It's really cool. It will give you a perspective that you don't see every day.
If they allow me to drink a martini at the time, I can be there at 3 a.m.
I'll see everyone at the castle.
May I?
Yes, sir.
I think you talked about
Ms.
that.
Ms. Hurtak, I would do that, but when I was growing up, you'd be home by 12,
Yeah.
or you won't be home at all.
Oh, please, when the street lights came
That's right.
Charlie and I will be at the castle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm most likely not gonna do the 3 o'clock one, but over the last 3 years or so, I've sat in at least 3 meetings that the chief of staff and whoever was police chief at the time has held in Ybor with the property owners. And Abby, Ms. Feely, I would just recommend, besides the other feedback you get directly from the officers in Ybor, that you also get feedback from the chief of staff and maybe even bring him. But he has personally sat in extensive meetings with groups of property owners in Ybor City and has taken a personal interest in it, and so have several police chiefs. So any feedback we can get to handle the overall crime situation. We're also, just so everybody knows, we're also doing things to change the perception of crime. Gerald Shaw just said at a dog park, which is getting people walking dogs more. That's something that leads to the visual perception. We're doing things with the arts and others to try to change people's perception of Ybor, but we do need to affect the crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 9.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I know we're running out of time. Everybody,
Yes, sir.
I don't think Stephen Benson's in here.
No.
The idea here is that I think there's some simple things we can do in these 3 or 4 zones. And Stephen Benson had some proposals on language that we might be able to do that would be a parallel path to the
other planning process.
Oh, do you have them?
I have,
Council Evan Johnson, City Planning, Stephen Benson had some conflicts due to the workshop dragging on a little later. So I'll do my best to cover for him. We've had some discussions based on the July code amendments related to the CD zoning districts, right? We discussed the motion, you made a motion related to increasing the height in CD1 zoning. So we are looking into that we had actually a little workshop last night, public workshop discussing that was one of the amendments that we've lined up as part of July. So that will be coming back to you all based on that motion and direction. The other areas that were brought up in the presentation included, I believe, was an update to a previous presentation that had been given. The other two main areas were West Shore, the West Shore overlay, which as is now does allow up to FAA height and does not have height caps as long as you're within the overlay itself. And I have some maps in the presentation if you want to see where that is. And I think the other ones were, you had downtown, which is all FAA, that's the cap. And the only real place where, that we had identified where there were issues along Kennedy was in the Kennedy overlay, which still has, I believe, mostly that, I want to say it's like 45 feet height for those areas. That overlay doesn't actually provide that flexibility for height. So that was an area where you had UMU 60 and some of those higher density intensities allowed, where based on the current zoning height caps, you could not achieve that without going for a rezoning.
Yeah, and just real fast, what I've said to neighborhood leaders and also what I've said to neighborhood leaders is, if we don't allow growth to go somewhere, they're gonna come in the middle of your neighborhood. And so if we give places that we can have maximum growth in the next 20 years, hopefully that will help us to grow and get the units we need without having to go in the middle of all the single-family neighborhoods. And I've mentioned this to the developers, and they said, we're great, give us the place to develop, and we'll do it. So the easier we can make it, the better.
Yeah, and I think right now, given that, well, first of all, West Shore has recently loosened some of its regulations on the update to the overlay. So the height has been allowed, the FAA height cap has been allowed for some time, but they've reduced parking, which is a significant driver of how much land you use when you build something. So I think there is an opportunity there that we're going to watch unfold over hopefully the coming months as developers get wind of that. As far as the Kennedy Boulevard itself, the piece that's in the overlay, that is an area that we could look into more and do some additional analysis. I think the issue there is we've seen some amendment activity, we've seen some development activity, but because that depth it's not significant depth, I certainly would want us to make sure that we're communicating with the neighborhoods and having conversations. Now, the real question then becomes, we had a long presentation this morning about our comp plan update, which very much is driving a lot of the discussions about land use and about heights and things like that. So I don't want to necessarily get ahead of that. If really that's the main place where we would be talking about
I think that's
addressing.
probably going to take too long, and if there's something we can do now, we should do it. Like I said earlier today, that we're missing the capital market crunch right now as money. It maybe is starting to tighten up based on what people are saying. We need to move. If there's something we can do short term, let's do that, and then we can do the longer term stuff later. But if we wait a year, we're going to miss a huge economic window.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The Channel Side District, are we at FAA minimums on all those parcels? We're not, are we?
You mean as far as what is allowed or what is
Right.
there?
What's allowed?
What is allowed? So currently, CD1 allows 60 feet, and CD2, which requires a PD zoning, essentially, is 175 feet. Now, they can bring a PD zoning in and request higher up to FAA's cap.
So couldn't we just go to FAA there? Without, I mean, why not make that a standard so they don't have to jump through hoops and hurdles to get to FAA heights
And
there?
the cost of it.
Yeah, so, and I think that's what we're kind of addressing right now with, well, first of all, at CD1, we're looking to increase the height to at a minimum that 175. And truthfully, anything over about 130 feet in Channel District will have to get FAA approval based on the height maps. They'll have to go to the Aviation
Right.
Authority and request it anyways. So we're looking to.
But we shouldn't be a hurdle for that.
Right.
Let that process play out. Let it be between FAA and the developer, not us. So we shouldn't put an arbitrary limit. Let them negotiate with the FAA.
Why can't we just do an area-wide rezoning now instead of waiting for the comprehensive plan to come back? Why can't we just do that? And I mentioned the problem is on the western side of Meridian, SPP is going up to the
Right.
maximum limit. On the other side, you got Pier House by the related group that's only 5 stories high. And,
Right.
and without spending any money, if we re-entitled that property, it would allow symmetry across both sides of the road, but it also allow opportunities for development.
No brainer.
Yeah, and I think the Pier House site, it went through several iterations, some of which were much taller back in the day, so they did go through several different rezonings with different owners. It's a very large site, and I think they made decisions about doing that kind of donut style with the garage wrapping around it for a variety of reasons. That's the one that has some of the biggest green space in the area. I think that we can certainly revisit and look into making, we talked about CD1 going up to the 175. We certainly can have, we're in process with that now.
What motion could I make to do an area-wide rezoning there?
The only thing I would say against an area-wide rezoning, and I'm sure Abby might have a comment about it, is the fact that I would be concerned about the noticing of everybody that we're rezoning their properties within the district when we are going to be entering a code reform process. And so that was one of the reasons why we were trying to find kind of surgical ways to address.
I think that code enforcement, that code process is going to take 5 years, so I don't have confidence in that process. So I want to try to do something now while we have the market opportunity.
Can I inject one more variable before you answer that question? Because also, as we see growth and development from the Central Business District transition across the river now and onto Kennedy, kind of the same thing we're talking about the channel side and the incongruity between the Central Business District and that we're going to create another thing. We've got related group is building the one high-rise there, and there's a couple others that are maybe coming. But can't we get consistency amongst these areas that would be typically now a future part of our urban core? I mean, quickly and easily, so that the city's not an obstacle for that development?
Sure, Abby Feely, I think Stephen discussed with you last week, you wouldn't do an area-wide rezoning because it would still be channel district. You would just change the height for the CD1 to go to 175 and the CD2 to go to FAA. The one thing I would say though is under CD2, you only get an allowable FAR of up to 3.5. So even if you give me 700 feet in the air, I only get 3.5 times my lot in development.
Okay, how do we change that?
Let me just finish the end of that. Because anything above 3.5 is where the bonus comes into play in the channel district, right? So from 3.5 to 7, which is their max, that's where you get the bonus agreements. So as long as you're operating under a 3.5 FAR, which is 3.5 times the building to the land, then you can have, if you change it to FAA, you can have it as high as you want. The unique thing about the Central Business District and the Channel District over the years is that even though a CD2, to go above that height, you became site plan controlled, there was always a set of uses and there was always an allowance. It was a real zoning district, right? When you do PDs in the rest of the city, they're not CI with a PD on top. In the Channel District and in the Central Business District, CBD 1 and CBD 2 have uses, heights, allowances. Channel District 1 and Channel District 2 have uses, heights, allowances, whether they're site plan controlled or not. So if you went through a Channel District site plan controlled, there's several out there. I believe there's only 4 or 5 parcels that would be coming online for this development, and then redevelopments, right? So if you set it now at FAA and I already have a CD2 that's site plan controlled, I could come back then and develop, but it's that intensity cap that's gonna stop them.
Yeah, but what, and like I said about bonus density this morning, that is just an obstacle that slows everybody down. The thing developers are saying is it takes us a year before we even come to council, and it costs a lot of money. And so how can we get rid of all that for the areas that it makes sense to grow in? And the same thing for Dale Mabry between 275 and Kennedy. We've got CompUSA that's going to be a 2-story building. It's crazy that we're not building a high-rise corridor there. And if it's the density, let's change it. What do we need? Isn't that what City Council does? Instead of doing it one at a time and costing developers a lot of money and taking time, where you heard the affordable housing people saying we need units. These may not be affordable, but there are going to be more units to put on the market to create the supply. Let's do it now and get it done so we can give people a place to develop.
I think we can definitely change those heights. That's not a problem. I'm a bit confused by the statement that the bonus density costs more and whatever. They come with the rezoning. They're done as part of the rezoning.
No,
We
they-
don't
why-
charge anything extra. We give that as a service as part of a standard
But why do
application.
what they're saying is, why do we have to apply for that at all? Just give us the maximum density, maximum height, for those areas that already have it. We give it across the street for, the CBD, right? City council doesn't even look at that.
But the central business district was done as a development of regional impact years ago, and all of the impacts associated with that was calculated holistically at that time, creating those pots of entitlements. We can look at that, as far as the Channel District goes. I think that is a larger conversation, especially because both the Central Business District and the Channel District are in the coastal high hazard
What-
area. And you had an extensively long conversation about that this morning. So I think we need to balance all of that when we're looking at just taking off our intensity limits and saying you can have as high as the sky, but by the way, you are in one of our prime evacuation zones. We need to be mindful of how all those things are working together as we try to accommodate a streamlined process, as we try to accommodate things coming online faster and more advantageous to the market, but also looking at our resiliency as a community and how we're continuing to grow.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to move downtown Tampa. So, I mean, you know, I've had that private conversation. We're stuck with the downtown we have in the location that we have. Is there any reason why, is the idea of having Channelside as a distinctive district from the central business district, is there any reason why that is still current and viable today? Why not just have it all, the central business district rules, the same, apply across the?
I made that motion.
That was the motion Councilman Carlson made, and that's
Well, that's what
where-
I'm saying, what's the real issue there? Why couldn't we just say, you know what, for all practical purposes, somebody flies into town, looks at the downtown city of Tampa, they don't see a line between downtown and Channelside, it all looks the same to them. I mean, is there really an urban planning reason to have these as two different areas?
I think when it started, there was an urban
Well, yeah,
planning.
there was a height
and-
limitation back then.
Well, and there
And then we
were
put the
master
towers
plans.
of Channelside blew through that.
And there were master plans, like
Right.
there was
Yeah.
a Channel Side district plan that talked about having 3 parks, one to serve the north, one to serve the
Right.
central, one to serve the south. I don't know, Evan, if you were at Stantec during that time when that whole plan was put together. It was
And now
Wilson Miller.
it's all gone.
Well, no, we grew, right?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
So we grew, those things filled out. At that time, Water Street was never contemplated. Water Street came into play. Now we have these 3 areas that merge together to create what you're discussing as the downtown. But many downtowns, even in large cities, have their own niche types of neighborhoods. I mean, when you're in Manhattan, you're in Chinatown, you're here, you're there. I mean, they still have their own character. So I don't know if just blanketing it over, I would
Well, that's why I asked about urban
what's our
planning. Is there an
goal?
urban planning reason to have these 2 different areas now in 2023? Is it still justifiable in our growth and development planning and the things that we've kind of honestly let slip through our fingers? Is it out of the cage?
I think that's a good question, and it's one we need to look at. And if Stephen would like to interject further on that, I
Well,
will.
what's
Jump in, the water's fine.
I just wanted to add that a lot has changed from a state legislation standpoint as well since those areas were planned. And so a lot of the tools that you have, like for instance, reducing density and reducing intensity, you can no longer do.
Right.
So you will probably never see staff bring forward to you an unlimited density potential for anywhere anymore. Because we want you to still have tools to be able to continue to adjust your approach as the market changes and as the city develops. That's why we don't want to expand downtown, is because if you give it away, it's done. There's no reeling it back in. And that's why in Alan's presentation earlier, he hit exactly on that. The bonus allows you to at least bring it back down if it goes wrong or if something happens and the community decides it's no longer liking the direction that program is moving in. To respond to your question about the motion for Channel, the motion that you made when we presented the July cycle, we added Channel District to that. So that is in process. We took it to the public meeting last night and talked to them about raising the height for CD1. And so we'll be bringing that back probably before Thanksgiving timeframe with like a package of amendments, and it'll probably be effective, I would say, January, February. But that one's the one in process. All the other areas, those are the ones that we'd be looking for motions if you'd like to move forward with something.
What I'd like to do is, you all have these other two process going forward, they're gonna take several years. And by the way, there were huge blanket statements made in that presentation earlier, like allowing RS 10 and most of South Tampa. I mean, huge blanket things that didn't look at the diversity of neighborhoods or regions. And so in this case, we're talking about at least three narrow corridors that we can look at. If West Shore is completely resolved, I've talked to some people who say we still need to tweak some things there, but if we don't, I'll talk to you about that offline. But at least Dale Mabry, and that one section of Dale Mabry and Channel District, if we can fast track that or triage it, we need to look at Kennedy too, and that, I know that's a separate process, but the thing that we're gonna have to tell the neighborhoods along there is, if you don't allow it on Kennedy, it's gonna come into your neighborhood, so where do you want it?
We can take a look.
It's gotta go somewhere.
Sure, we can take a look at West Shore in that specific location, and we will bring you what we find. I can tell you that this last amendment that came through did increase a lot of it increased a lot of what you can do in the West Shore Business District, and FAA is already allowed. So what they're probably doing is they're going above FAA, which we can't control how much higher the FAA is going to allow above what the map says. That depends on the project that's proposed and whatever is allowed by the FAA at the time. But we can bring that to you and go through what has changed when that overlay was edited last year, and see if there are any holes that could be addressed.
I know everybody's in a hurry to go. What motions should I make now?
I think we can bring forward an analysis of the West Shore overlay to see what additional changes can be done to encourage.
Should I just continue the whole item until for a staff
I think
report?
we would probably prefer if it was more specific to say, looking at the West Shore overlay to look at increasing.
And when?
Height. I think we would probably look for some time in 2024 at this point.
January, February?
I don't have the agenda in front of me, but.
Can it be a staff report, or does it need to be
fine.
workshop? February
28.
or February 1st?
No, aren't we looking further down?
Is it a workshop?
No, not a workshop.
I think they're looking at a staff
We can do
report,
a
not a workshop.
So just a motion to have staff return to talk about how to specifically increase height in the West Shore Overlay District
That would be
on
fine.
February 1st.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin?
February 1st.
Yes. All in favor? Yes, ma'am.
Aye.
No, we have discussion.
Yeah, I have to ask, is this gonna impact bonus density that would encourage affordable housing?
We're just looking at the zoning. So this is sort of within whatever bonus density you have now. If you decide to change that with the plan update, that would be a separate discussion.
Okay,
but-
because that's the only thing, I don't wanna stop the requirement for having to put affordable housing. I have no problem with height.
Understood.
I just wanna make sure that those bonus densities are still in there, and so we're still gonna encourage and incentivize building affordable housing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the bonus density deals with the FAR, correct? So
Yeah,
that would not
I
deal-
know, I just.
So that wouldn't deal with the
but-
height necessarily.
There is a relationship.
Yeah, there is.
but-
Yeah,
And we
I
will
just-
we will speak to that when we come bring you a report.
Great.
We'll address if
Thank
there's
you.
any conflicts.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Do I need, what about Channel District? Do we need to,
We already
Oh,
have a
sorry.
motion for that.
And then
Kennedy
s-
was the only other one if you wanted to do that.
Dale Mabry, is that,
Would be at the Kennedy.
Just the Kennedy Boulevard overlay.
that includes Dale Mabry?
No, that's under West Shore. Del Mabry's covered under the West Shore
Okay.
overlay.
That section of Dale Mabry, okay. Just have, motion to have staff come back on February 1st to report on possibilities for adding density and height along the Kennedy corridor.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
All right, thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
can I say one more thing? To those of you, maybe you all know this, but those of you who went to Jefferson High School,
Oh, here we go.
Here we go, Dragons, go Dragons.
Let the man finish.
so they're gonna change their mascot now. Every 10 years, there's a proposal to take over the property there and relocate the school or make it vertical. So that is surfacing again. That is surfacing again, so.
I never had anything against Jefferson.
It's not gonna happen.
So I served on city council.
All
Too many
right.
powerful dragons.
We'll go on to item number 10. regarding accessory dwelling units for the area south of Kennedy.
Yay.
There's a PowerPoint for that?
Stephen Benson,
Can we get the presentation?
introduce yourself.
Stephen Benson, City Planning. Thank you.
We need it on
Is
the
it,
big
can you see?
screen.
Oh, there you go. I'll try to move very quickly through this.
Okay, we'll be quiet.
So we've been a lot of places with ADUs. We came to you several times over the last several years with some recommendations. We've done 2 surveys already that were open for citywide input. We presented status report on 2 of the neighborhood initiated proposals that you acted upon, the East Tampa overlay as well as the Tampa Heights proposal. So we sort of took that message as, you know, council's really more interested and would more likely to be entertaining a neighborhood by neighborhood approach. We did go ahead in the spirit of the motion meet with the Davis Islands Civic Association and Hyde Park as well. Mary Lou Bailey was here earlier. She wasn't able to stay into the afternoon. But we're very grateful because Hyde Park did prepare a very extensive summary of the pros and the cons. There were a lot of cons and a lot of concerns about the impacts of something like this. So we really kind of took that to heart. And given the limited, really, staff time we have to focus on this, the limited resources that we have, it is our recommendation that moving forward for additional areas, exploration, that we focus on areas where there is a high amount of interest in seeing ADUs allowed and also a high amount of understanding about what it means. And so we put another survey out that was sort of a thumbs up or thumbs down survey. This just shows you the existing areas in purple and the areas that you recently approved in orange. So you basically doubled the amount of allowable areas. So congratulations, because that was a pretty heavy lift. Unfortunately, this is the result, and this is why we wanted to have a citywide approach. If you have different rules for every neighborhood, you end up with different rules for every neighborhood, and it becomes very complex and burdensome for staff to administer consistently. We are up to the challenge, but as we move forward, we are going to be trying to focus on not having so many different tweaks. So we're going to be not only looking at new areas, but also working with some of these existing areas to say, hey, East Tampa had a really great idea about their ADUs. Are you interested in incorporating it in Seminole Heights, and vice versa? We think that we can make this look a lot more consistent as we move forward and as people see that some of the ideas that Tampa Heights put in place, we think were really great, like the no more than 2 unrelated occupants. But unfortunately, the general code didn't have that. So our approach, and I'm going to kind of fast forward through this to get to the end, is that we will be monitoring and collecting feedback in the areas that were recently approved, and just to determine, has it worked? Are you getting ADUs? Are there any other barriers or issues or concerns? I can tell you a lot of the feedback that we received about areas that wanted us to focus on ADUs were areas where they were already allowed. Just for whatever reason, the dimensional criteria, the parking requirements, they couldn't actually get it done on their site, or they had already talked to zoning, and zoning says, well, you have to do this and this and this, and it just wasn't feasible for them. So how can we go about making that a little bit more effective and making it easier to do this on your property in areas where it's already allowed? But also focus on areas where, through this survey process, we got extremely high responses and extremely high numbers of thumbs up. We want them, and we're engaged, and we want to engage with you in this conversation. So the areas that we're proposing to focus on would be these 3 zip codes, 33604, 33603, and 33605. And the proposal is not to bring you an ordinance for those areas. The proposal is to go have conversations with those neighborhoods and say, we know you're interested, we know that you want to have a conversation. This is what these areas, across the street have done. Riverside Heights, I think, came and said, we really want Tampa Heights as overlay. Let's go talk to Riverside Heights and tell them what we just did for Tampa Heights. And just see if we can open that up a little bit more, because we know that there's an interest here, and we know this can be one of the many solutions to some of our housing issues. Not the silver bullet, of course, but since these areas we know support it, let's start there, and not necessarily start in areas where we know there's a ton of opposition or a ton of concern.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is awesome and a really heavy lift. And I love the idea of trying to coalesce some of these new ideas, especially some of the stuff East Tampa and Tampa Heights did. to the current areas. Seminole Heights, I'm thinking of especially as having I used to have to deal with all of those. So I think that's something that that neighborhood overall would be really willing to look at the modifications. The only other thing I might recommend is, I mean, you can certainly go neighborhood by neighborhood, but if there are 3 or 4 neighborhoods who are like, yeah, let's do it, I think we could kind of group those together and just get it going. So thank you so much for this. This is really exciting to see the parts of the city that are willing to move forward on this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read his recommendation, no eagle eye doesn't see West Tampa on there. On proposed areas of outreach. Is there a reason for that?
That's correct. So when we did this survey, we were looking for high response and also high support, both. So the areas that you see here were where people responded and where we know there were a lot of people that were responding affirmatively.
I'd like to take you on a tour with me. In fact, I'm gonna say something now I've been thinking for a long time. See, I've only filed one lawsuit my whole life. That was in 1972. And I promised myself within a very short time, I'm gonna file another one. And it's gonna be like this, against myself, my 6 other colleagues, and the administration, because this is more likely my last term and certainly their last term. So what is missing there is the one's got the most violations of, in a quarter of a mile, I can show you more violations there than in the whole city of Tampa. So I'm gonna fix it one way or the other before I leave. And let me tell you how. We have known it for at least 20 years that there's been people living in residential dwellings that are not zoned, not only zoned for dwellings of rental. You can have rental, but you have to report it, and then your tax on your rental property is about 3.5 times the tax of your own house. Right where I live, my tax is about $1,000 plus $250 for the wastewater, whatever, wastewater drain or whatever it was. I forget the name of it exactly right now. Right next to me, there's a house with 4 units in it at about $800, $900 a room. And they pay this, L0. And what they collect on income, I would imagine, I'm not criticizing anyone, is never reported, so they don't have to pay the federal income tax. And like that, the previous administration, just before they left, gave me a map with 131 units. And I believe Ms. Abby might know about it, because I think you were there when they presented. I don't know if you were there or not. Just in a small area of West Tampa. And you see what I'm talking about? Just talking about up to 35-foot trailers or whatever. I'm laughing at that. If I can take you in 10 minutes, and show you 10 in West Tampa, that they're there for pretty at night, because during the day they're just there with the extended unit, pull out. They have a little area for shade, and you go by at night, they got a light in them. So I guess they put the light on just to make sure that the canaries don't get out. That also not being collected nowhere. So the problem is we're afraid to face reality. And one thing about being over 80, you change a lot how you think. You know your day is coming within a few years, so you try to do the best you can. And I'm not going to leave this earth without filing that lawsuit or fixing the problem, one or the other. But I guarantee you it's going to be done. And it's not going to be pretty, because I got all the evidence, all the pictures. In fact, I'll guarantee you that if we were to go and do what was here about Ybor City, if I was to get that and put 4 names in a computer, because some people have 4 names, and they have one house that is homesteaded, I'm taking an educated guess. You'll find that same individual, the probability is there, let me change my wording, the probability is there that the same individual's got another house homesteaded with 3 names. And it's not the same person, I guess. Do you believe that? You you believe I've got hair on my head. And we're not doing anything about it. Why? We're afraid. Afraid of what? Policemen are not afraid, but they're never told to do anything. In fact, when you read the court enforcement thing, if somebody's to call any of our 8 offices, including the mayor's office, by law, we have to tell them who called us. But if you read another 2 paragraphs down, it says, and then it's got a little thing that says, however, court enforcement, if they find it themselves and they're looking for it, it's acceptable. I believe that's what it says. I don't read too well sometimes. And who's telling court enforcement to go out and enforce the law? Not us. This has been in my throat for a long time, and I'm not going to chew it anymore, and I'm not going to swallow it. Something's going to happen. Whether I live or die doesn't matter to me. But I will fix that before I leave. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Carlson.
Switch gears for a second. Just to remind everybody, when this came up for a vote 6 months or a year ago, the proposal was to do something citywide, and at the time there had been very little outreach to any of the South Tampa neighborhoods, and when they found out, they strongly opposed it. And so I made a proposal so that we could move forward with the rest of the city, that we take South Tampa out. And some of my colleagues at the time expressed some concerns about that. But had we not taken South Tampa out, we would have had tons of people in here holding up the whole process. So we wouldn't have it anywhere else because South Tampa would have stopped it most likely.
Of course they would.
And because first of all, they didn't know anything about it. And second, there are concerns about Airbnbs moving in and other questions which are being answered. When Stephen went to the Hyde Park meeting, I happened to walk in, and they were beating him up pretty strongly, and he was doing a great job talking to him. But I stood up and told everybody, we're just talking about this in concept. And so he's very bravely is going back in and meeting with everybody, and I'm happy to go with you to talk about it as well. I think if we go through this longer process, parts or all of South Tampa may accept it, but we need to go through the process. It's not fair to tell any part of the city that they must do something because a few activists are asking for it. The other thing, as I mentioned to you all, I went to Austin with the St. Pete Chamber earlier this year, and in Austin they talked about the need for building 10 times the number of housing that they claimed, but they also told us that activists there had pushed for ADUs, and it had been a very small solution. It was nowhere near what the expectations were that were promised to them. And one of the reasons is the cost of building new ones. And so, although this is a piece of the solution, it's not going to be a catch-all solution for everything. Last thing, Councilmember Miranda, I'm not afraid to support you if you want me to second a motion to have staff come back at some time to talk about the illegal units in West Tampa. So,
I believe that item is already on the agenda for February to come back.
Yep. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
We don't need, we're not asking for action at this time. What we plan to do is over the next 3 to 6 months, we're gonna reach out to these neighborhoods and have a conversation and see where it goes. It may not go anywhere. We think that there's promise, but we'll come back and initiate a request at that time. Yep.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Really, this is more so of a question for Dragon Miranda about this issue that you don't want to take to your grave before you address it. So is it a situation where you believe, or do you believe that folks are just solving their own housing problems? I'm just curious.
No, I don't, let me put it this way.
Or is this capitalism?
And let me take it this way. If you go to Hialeah, you'll see
Miami?
West Tampa north in Hialeah.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say, because it's about not paying, and it's about doing things that they're paying, if they pay their fare, I don't care.
Okay. I'm just curious. I think at least I'm getting a sense of.
Listen, not only that, I'm sure there's other things that you can look at, the same thing. Semis were not allowed in the city of Tampa.
Semi-trucks?
They could drive through, yes, semi-trucks. the tractor and the trailer. I see now tractor and trailers parked mainly in West Tampa, because that's the one I look at the most, because I drive through it. And I don't say anything, because they're not doing anything, until some law that we passed that said that for whatever reason, they have the word correction of the wording in it, and so they can't enforce it. That was a month and a half ago that I found that out, and I still haven't seen an ordinance come here. If they found it, let them fix it, whoever they were. So why should I do that, or the council do that? I'm just waiting my time. I know where they're all at. In fact, there's one real close that they opened the gate. They built a gate on the starting side of the street so that the tractor can go in and stay there on weekends while they're doing, and I understand that they work hard, don't get me wrong. We used to be able to put a patch on the windshield that you can just tear off without breaking up and everything, very nice. And they told them, this is illegal, this is the section of the law, if you do it the next time, we're gonna pick up the tractor.
Like those orange stickers?
Yeah, and you
Okay.
peel them right off. And it took care of 99% of the problems. Now they say you can't do that anymore, changing of the law.
Okay.
That can be changed. I'm just waiting to see when they're gonna do it.
Yeah, I was in McFarland
I'm
Park,
not-
McFarland
I'm
Park
still
last
my
night.
turn. It's still my
And
turn.
they brought
It's
that
still my
issue
turn.
up of the semi-trucks, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am?
No, I was curious about that because, you know, we are in a housing crisis and, you know, sometimes, you know, like Joe Robinson said, implementation is not our strongest suit. So, you know, people decide to solve their own problems. I do believe that people should pay their fair share, and maybe this is a situation just like the parking in Ybor City, is that if these legal housing dwellings exist, that we're gonna have to provide them with the opportunity to correct them first. So I just wanna say that for the record, and okay.
If I may.
Sure.
In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, I drive different. I say it all the time. I come home, I come this way different, I go back different so I can see what's going on. And one day I saw a couple here on I think it was on Lincoln between Kathleen and Eileen. And I saw a nice area, beautiful, nice, with 2 doors. Now you show me what house has 2 doors. And they were not next together. One was here, one was here. So I looked at the building, I see a little structure difference. And when that house came up, it was a lady asking, oh, my family's moving in, and I'm not gonna have no rent, I'm not gonna collect anything. And I told myself, they're lying through their teeth. Now, remember the address was 32 something. So I followed that. They gave them 1-1, I didn't vote for it. And I don't blame the council, they don't see it all the time. Guess what happened a month and a half later?
What happened?
The house was put up for sale and sold. No relative ever lived there. Now they got 2 apartments there. So that's what they do. This is not that they're doing it because they want to help somebody. This is what they want to help themselves. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Carlson?
And no, I wasn't done. I have one more thing. I was just curious. So you went to Austin with the St. Pete Chamber. How did you do that, Councilman Carlson?
Because through my company, I'm a member of the St. Pete Chamber,
Oh, okay.
and the Tampa Chamber, and the Clearwater Chamber, and the South Tampa Chamber, and the Ybor Chamber, and a few others.
You're just an overachiever, but okay. Just curious. I want to go.
We're going to join the chamber.
Go
I'm
next
only
year.
joking.
When, yes, sir.
Mayor, yeah, I wish we could talk about this stuff, but Mayor Welch went too, and really interesting. Item number 13,
Yes.
we keep continuing this. I would like to continue it again, though. I met with Ms. Feely and Ms. Travis, and
Many restaurants.
just like there was a day years ago when there were no regulations around drive-throughs, because drive-throughs didn't exist. Now there aren't cities that we can find yet that have regulations about this, but I still would like us to keep looking and think about this and maybe be an innovator. And we can talk about it more now, or we can continue it to January 11th.
Let's continue to
Okay,
January
so
11th. We have
moved.
motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilwoman Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
What about item number 11? Did you have anything for 11?
I do.
Do you want to
Prepared for
continue?
every item.
Do you want to continue? Do you want to talk about it today? This is a Councilmember Miranda motion.
I have 4 slides.
Oh, it'll be quick? Okay.
It's
good.
very quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Abby
This,
Feely.
hi. Abby Feely, Deputy Administrator, Development and Growth Management. This item 11 was related to requiring landscape plans for PDs. And I think this came out of some recent cases where people were asking for waivers of trees and waivers of green space, but then they were saying they could plant stuff, but they really weren't sure they could plant stuff, and it came up. We went ahead, you know, PDs are entitlement plans. They're not engineered plans. So sometimes you'll see a project, and then when they finally go to construction drawings or design drawings, they'll see that there's a water pipe that runs through, and now they have to shift the building over, or there are other things that happen, and the final engineering takes place after they get entitled from you. So we did look at other jurisdictions. We looked at 6 of them similar to us to see, does anybody require a full landscape plan as part of their site plan development approvals? And they don't. A couple of them require conceptual types of plans, but that was what we took a look at for you. It would be our recommendation that maybe we do some sort of conceptual for those that are asking for those larger PD waivers. The other part to that is whenever anybody does a PD application, they do turn in a project narrative with justifications. So if they're asking for that, they might need to ask for some other or provide another justification as to their green space requests or landscape and buffer requirements. But the one thing, I did talk to several applicants who bring stuff to you on a regular basis, and they had reservation that if they put an elm on the plan they show you, and then they go out there and it's a power line tree and they need to put a maple or a crepe myrtle that's a power line, are they gonna have to rezone? So I get where you are in the decision-making process, because when somebody's trying to ask you for relief, but they can't show you what they're gonna be able to provide you, and I'm gonna tell you, this happened to me in 2006, Z06-113 with Linda Salsena. It was the Greenwise Publix in Hyde Park, and they put up these fabulous elevations that showed this lush landscaping, and the whole time the project was getting constructed, they kept saying, where's landscaping? And at the end of the day, they couldn't plant what they showed. And at that point in time, in some applications, in the 2008, 2009 range, we did have people provide landscape plans. But this is food for thought. How would you like to handle it? You're seeing these applications, you're making these difficult decisions when somebody's saying, I'm waiving 40,000 square feet of green space, but look, I'm gonna do this, and then they can't give you that assurance without giving you a dimension plan of some sort or something more than just what's on the site plan.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I appreciate this and I completely understand it. That is why I still kind of want to go forward with the idea of if you can't make your landscaping plan work, there's an in lieu fee and you got to pay toward a park. I think, yes, do we need to have some landscape there? Yes. But the reality is, as we become more urban and as we really get to the edges of the available building envelope, that we need to provide some relief in terms of incentivizing paying for parks with some in lieu fees. I would love to see that come forward or talked about or discussed among you all to see what you could do about it. I know it's not technically this, but at the same time, in a lot of the areas, we aren't getting.
So I just want to clarify, when an applicant comes to you and asks for that waiver, they do pay an in lieu fee.
I know, but
And
I would
that
also
goes-
like to look at the.
It goes into the park district that they're in, right? So it does vary too, and I can bring you back that map at another time. There's a map and it's different districts cost different amounts. So they pay those amounts and it goes in and we collect that at permitting and goes to Parks and Rec.
Yes, but
So-
I don't want it just to go to Parks and Rec, but to the closest park.
Okay.
Because right now we have a list of things to do at every park. And that incentivizes the neighborhood to really work with the developer because that immediate area is going to see some type of benefit. If there's not a park in the area, what about adding trees to right-of-ways? Like, what other ways can we incentivize developers to help pay for our goals if they can't provide it right there? And I think we need to look at the increase of in lieu fees for this type of work. A landscape plan, I mean, absolutely can be difficult because of all those things, but I think if we provide other ways for developers to get there, I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. You know, talking about trees, just thinks, and this is not because of development or somebody rezoning a piece of property or anything like that, just thinks how many thousands and millions of trees were burned in California because of forest fire, and in Canada. I guarantee you there have to be 5 million trees gone, or 10, I don't know. So thinking of that, and I won't make it a day because it's too much close to the time we have to go to another session. What I'd like to see, Ms. Feely, is a congregation of facts going together with what the recommendations were at the time they applied and did all that. And if they have to remove so many trees, they have to replace so many trees. But that I know of, the city's trying to get people to want trees in their yard, they plant them or whatever. I'd like to see a marriage of all those 3 or 4 things together that can be verifiable by computer. That's the easiest way. When they come in to get the final order, well, I need to replace 10 trees, and okay, and here's in lieu of, you pay. And then those trees at the time that they do that, they have to go to a specific location. And in that location, they're tagged with a metal tag and a spike in the tree. That's not going to kill the tree, believe me when I tell you. And then you can verify that that tree went there for the public to think of that we're not trying to blindfold anybody and doing anything illegally. So therefore, that tree then goes there, and who's responsible? If it's going in somebody's yard, they're responsible for watering and so forth. If it goes somewhere else, in a park or something, we're responsible for that. So that then that tree is monitored for the first 6 months, which is the time that the tree's either going to make it or not make it. The tree has to be replaced. So that way, everybody's got a clear conscience. The good people that are talking about trees are more at ease because they feel that we're doing something, and we are. And I don't want this government to say, well, it's not our job. We're facilitating the growth of the city, and at the same time, we got to balance that with nature. And I wish I could be more of a naturalist than I am now, because every time I ask somebody to do solar, oh, well, I can't afford it, I can't do this. But you know what? You can't afford it if you really want to do it, because there's ways of getting it. So I'm just saying the tree thing is one thing that I think is important, so that we prove to the community that what we're doing is factual. We right now can't prove it. That's my feeling. But thank you very much for listening, and later on I'll write it out. But I'm not making a motion today.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Anybody in the public wish to speak on this? No? Can we please hold our new business until this evening? Yes, sir. Very good. We are then, we may have a motion to receive and file. Motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. We will be back at 5:01 p.m. for our evening session.